In fact, I came here from Baghdad. My wife is more concerned about me being out here, if you could believe that. At any rate, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by saying thank you to Claudia and her team from RHCC. Can we give them a round of applause, please? This is certainly a worthwhile cause and has brought me out here to talk to you tonight. Clearly, the organization and the audience that we have here tonight recognize the many sacrifices that our military has made over the past 10 years, if not longer. President Obama recently stated, as we near the 10th anniversary of the attacks that thrust our nation into war, this is also an occasion to pay tribute to a generation that has borne the burden of our security during a hard decade of sacrifice. Certainly couldn't have said it any better. I'm sure that each and every one of you here tonight know where you were on that dreadful day of 9/11. I certainly do. When over 3,000 of our citizens were lost that day. And America was changed in an instant. I'd like to think for the better. I stand before you tonight as the son of a soldier. My father retired out of the Army after 20 years. He fought in Korea. He fought in Vietnam. In fact, he threatened me with bodily harm if I ever joined the Army. But his Army was much different to mine. His Army was a draft Army. Mine is an all-volunteer force. I stand also before you as the husband and wife, our husband to my wife of nearly 20 years, the father of 2 great kids, as was mentioned in the bio, and I'm a soldier that has worn this uniform for nearly 28 years. I'm a proud soldier, I must admit. Let me start by saying that the military has changed significantly over the past 30 plus years. My father's Army, my dad was told that the Army wanted you to have a family, that they issued it to you. Fortunately, things have changed. Even when I joined the Army in 1983, right out of high school as a 17-year-old kid, in the midst of our transition to an all-volunteer force, very few of our soldiers were married. But in fact, today, we have 1 million spouses, over 2 million children, most of whom have lived their entire lives while we have been at war. And over the past decade, more than 2 million of our troops have served in war zones, deploying more than 2.5 million times. Dozens and thousands of those soldiers have deployed multiple times. I'm one of those. But today's soldier is different in many ways than the draft force that my father enlisted into. And let me tell you why. Today, fewer than 3 out of 10 of the 17 to 24-year-olds across the country even qualify to wear a uniform. That probably surprises most people in this room. We're not the Army that we were then. We're not even the Army that I joined. We're a much more professional force today. And our ability to accomplish missions around the globe as efficiently as we have, both over the past 10 years and past 30 years, if you'll excuse me for being proud of my heritage, lies within our ability to attract the best and brightest that America has to offer. And the good news is, we enlist the best and brightest, and then we make them better. We make them better by putting them in uncomfortable positions, but ensuring that they can succeed. That's what the Army did for me, and that's what the Army does for all of our young men and women that enlist today. Our focus in the military has always been on education. The Army paid for my bachelor's degree, the Army paid for my master's degree, and the Army does that for a lot of young soldiers, both while on active duty and when they get out. The focus that we have daily for our soldiers is naturally extended to their families. We're constantly pushing our soldiers to reach the next higher grade or next higher level of education. And of course, they take that same attitude home to their families. Our spouses clearly recognize the importance of education due to the unique challenges that our families have with moving away from extended families. Frequent moves, typically I move every 3 years, whether I need to or not. Family separation as spouses deploy on the multi-deployments that I discussed. And underemployment of our military spouses, it is critical that they have an educational advantage. And that's why this foundation is so important. To quote an Air Force spouse, the nomadic lifestyle of a military family definitely affected my educational choices. There is no extended family to lend child care support, and it takes time to make friends. In addition, there was not a lot of discretionary money to pay for child care on top of tuition and books. End quote. In the Army, we have a saying and have for many years, that we enlisted soldier but we re-enlist a family. And programs like the RHCC that the Foundation has provided assist us and go a long way in keeping our families just as happy as our soldiers. And that is a service to our service members that allows us to protect and defend this great nation that we do so well. As service members, we appreciate both the confidence that America has in our institution and the unprecedented support that we've seen over the past 10 years. As a soldier that has served even before the unprecedented patriotism that has swept across this country, I can tell you that it is humbling, is probably the correct word, to see the overwhelming support that we receive on a daily basis. We thank you very much for that. One of our greatest challenges in the military today that I'd like to share with you is something that the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has mentioned on numerous occasions recently. And that is the disconnection, if you will, between the civilian population and our military. As we've gotten away from that draft Army 35 years ago or so, and we now have basically 1% of our population that wears a uniform, you can see where the Chairman might have a little bit of a concern. In the draft years, we had nearly every family that was touched in some way by the military, because someone in your family had been drafted. We don't have that same thing today. I'm not advocating for it either, by the way. I like the professional force that we have today, but what I would ask you to do and encourage you to do is to speak to one of the soldiers that we have in attendance tonight. I think you'll be glad that you did. I'd like to close with a quote from General Odinero, who was recently appointed as the Army Chief of Staff. And he said, quote, "Despite the challenges, we confront the future from a position of great strength. Our Army will continue to be the best equipped, best trained, and best led force in the world. The strength of our nation is our Army. The strength of our Army is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers is our families. That is what makes us Army strong." Again, I would like to thank Claudia and the team from RHCC for putting this together tonight. We really appreciate your support. Army strong. Oh.